Thank you for joining us and welcome to Higgs in Conversation With. This podcast is designed to dive into the minds of some of the most successful individuals who are in senior positions within leading businesses in the UK and aims to provide a peek into their life both personally and professionally. My name is James Modley and I will be your host. I am a partner in the Commercial Dispute Resolution team at Higgs LLP. We have something really special for you today, and I'm delighted to welcome Fiona Meany, Global Head of Litigation for Jones Lang LaSalle, also known as JLL, a global commercial real estate firm that provides services for buying, building, occupying, managing, and investing in various types of property with offices in 80 countries. Now, as a firm, Higgs, we are celebrating our 150-year anniversary this year, which we think is incredible. However, JLL is 222 years old this year and was founded in 1783 in London. What an amazing achievement. Fiona, welcome. Thank you for joining me, and I really look forward to chatting with you for the next hour.
Thanks, James. Thank you. That was if you could see me close up, you'd see I'm blushing a little bit because that's quite an introduction. But yes, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. And I know you were mentioning JLL and you were saying it's a real privilege to work for a company with that kind of history. So thank you for the opportunity to have a chat.
Not at all. The pleasure is all mine. So I've briefly mentioned who you are, your job role, but just tell me, because it sounds super interesting, what is it that you do on a daily basis, and a little bit about how all of that fits into your company?
Yes. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm the Global Head of Litigation at JLL. I also wear a couple of other hats. So I lead our Centre of Excellence for our ethics investigators, and I'm also the General Counsel for our Value and Risk Advisory business. So I have the joy of keeping lots of plates spinning. And in terms of my role, I suppose I'm certainly, if I focus on the litigation side of things, I'm there to provide strategic leadership for that function. And I lead a team of litigators who are based in the US, the UK, and Australia. And our aim really is to resolve matters in JLL's best interest, whatever that means for us based on the particular matter at hand. So that means on a day-to-day basis, that means I spend a lot of my time speaking with my colleagues all around the world, which is a real joy. You know, I get to wake up, speak to people in Asia, then kind of chase the sun across Europe and over to the US and the Americas later in the day. And it's really about connecting, and whatever issue has come up on that particular day or that we're addressing, we're trying to find a solution. What's the best solution for us as a company? How do we get there? What's the outcome? How are we going to take away those lessons learned and build on that for the future?
How do you find the time? So you've just mentioned some places there, different continents, different time zones. How do you find the time to do all of your roles across all of those multiple platforms that you have?
Yeah, it makes me sound like I've got one of those. Well, they're the time turners in Harry Potter or something, you know.
Or Bernard's watch.
Yes, yeah, and to be honest, I'm very lucky. I work with fantastic colleagues, so it sounds very impressive. But really, my job is really connecting with people who are doing the hard work and trying to make sure we're going in the right direction, providing some input, providing some guidance, saying actually, in my experience, this way might be the way forward. So I'm very lucky to work with some great people. The time zones piece is a challenge for any global company, and you just find a way through and try and be very sensible and respectful of people having lives as well, including me. And we manage to find a really good balance because we have a great team. So it can, you know, at moments, pinch points, you know, we're litigators, we know we get those pinch points. Sometimes it means you are working very hard outside of a normal kind of working zone, but that will balance out over time, and we try and make sure we're respectful of people's time over the course of any given matter.
And I think you just touched upon, and we'll come on it later, but you just touched upon the importance of having a really, really strong team around you and the ability to be able to rely on that team, which as a law firm partner, it's really important that you have that, because you've only got two sets of hands, and the people around you make me who I am, for sure. And it sounds as though that's exactly the case in your position.
Yes, yeah, I'm incredibly lucky in terms of the people I work with. So both in my reporting line, my general legal and compliance colleagues, and just across the business, work with exceptional people who are very, very good at what they do. And so it's really about trying to make sure we're coordinated, we're moving in the same direction. We've got a clear line of sight in terms of what's the strategy and connecting the dots. I say this a lot to my team. A lot of my job is really around connecting the dots, because I do speak to lots of different people. I might be able to say, oh, you're looking at this. Well, do you know what? We had something similar in Australia last week. So let me connect you with so-and-so who's already done a piece of work on that. And that's where I can hopefully add some value.
And it's the people, isn't it? The people make the business, the culture, and provides the ability for things to happen. And it's the people, but the communication. So communication, it should be one of the easiest things to do, right? But it's so often the hardest to get right, especially across the amount of platforms that you have. So what's your top tip from a communication perspective?
That's a really good question. First of all, I completely agree with you. I think when I do see issues pop up, pretty much every single time at some level, when you really drill down into it, it will be a breakdown in communication is really what's driven it. And so we do try and predict that, and we try and get ahead of it so we don't have those issues. They come up, and often when they come up, it's an awareness point. So and so didn't realise that somebody else needed to know about this, or what have you. So I suppose when it comes to communication, my main point is do it early, do it often. Because especially if you're sharing bad news, for example, bad news early is good news, right? As long as you can see it coming and you know what's coming down the track, then you can plan for that, and you can make whatever provisions you need to make so that you've got that in your line of sight. But if you leave things late, if you hoard information, that's not helpful. And that goes back to the teamwork point you raised. Teamwork is a core value of JLL's, and it's something, just even on a personal level, I think we succeed. We have more success, and we get there quicker, and we get there more efficiently by working as a team and drawing on each other's strengths. And you need communication to get to that level of teamwork, and that helps build trust.
Yeah, and something else you've just said as well, and it's worth exploring this just briefly. We've all got different strengths, so we don't all excel in the same field. But I think if you can manage to put all of the pieces to put the puzzle together, so it paints the picture and bring out the best of everyone in a team environment, that's really powerful. But equally, that's a skill in itself, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be a nightmare to work in a world where it's just clones of me in the
I know.
team.
Well, not I know for you. I know for me as well.
It'd be awful. I am looking amongst my team, and even when I think now about the people I work with in my team, everyone is exceptional, but everyone also has a particular area where they really are kind of outstanding at something, and it's being able to spot. I think as a leader, being able to spot where the gaps are and trying to plug those over time through recruitment, through training, whatever it is a really important skill. But we need that combination. Going back to teamwork, we need that combination. And we also need that willingness to share. So it's a really important component for us in the teams I work with. And it's something I really push of be open to learn from each other. We all are all here, and we're all very, very good at what we do. So how can we be even better? And that's from learning from each other, we're on those points where we are really outstanding.
And you mentioned the word exceptional. What do you class as optimal performance for the people listening? So what do you class as not just being good, but being exceptional and being above what level you should be, the optimal performance? What do you class that as?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is such a lawyer's answer, it will differ depending on circumstances. But if I think through from a broader perspective, I think it's when you're really trying to grow, when you're trying to have that optimal performance, you have to think 3 steps ahead. You have to be proactive, and you also have to understand and set and determine what the strategy is here. Because it's one thing, just working through the process, doing the day by day, but what are we working towards? What's the overall driver? What's the overall aim? And setting that early and revising that over time is great, but you need to have that set early and you need to be able to communicate that clearly. That's really important. So when I've run litigation cases, and I don't do so many now because that's not my day-to-day, my day-to-day is more helping the team do that. But when I run litigation cases, one of the things that I try and do is have a 2-line explanation of what is this case, what is our position on this case. And if you can't articulate that in 2 lines, then you need to spend the time to articulate it. And then everything else builds from that. So can you condense down the strategy into very simple, very sharp bullet points? And then everything flows from that. Every decision you then make flows from that piece. And people who do that, and people who, it's a skill and you can absolutely learn to do it. People who do that, I think, have a more coordinated approach moving forward, and the decision making stands up much more clearly.
I think that is a really, really brilliant insight into not only how you do things, but also when I'm speaking to in-house counsel across various businesses, whatever business that may look like, big, small, medium, whatever, they always just want to know exactly what you've said. The short email, where is it, where we're at, where are we going? Because I need to go back to the board or the rest of the business to say, this is what it is and this is where we're going to. So I think for people listening to this, especially junior lawyers or lawyers that are coming through the ranks, that's really, really important insight. And it is a skill, as you say, and it does take time to get right and harness and perfect. But I think if you can do that from an external add-on and also internal, it will help you guys and help us as external legal advisors, no end. Another quick question that we've kind of touched upon, but I'm just looking to condense everything. What's your 3 non-negotiables for success?
So let's see. So if I approach this just from a personal viewpoint, and these are more characteristics. These are more characteristics, I think. Enthusiasm, and then 2 things we've touched on: communication and teamwork. And I think having those as a baseline, everything else, in my experience, everything else will slot in over time. So you don't need to know everything, right? If you're appointed as a technical advisor, absolutely, there is an expectation on your baseline knowledge is at least here. But especially when you're junior, you don't know everything. But being enthusiastic to learn, being enthusiastic to grow, really takes you a long way. And then the communication piece again, and this is, and all of these are learned things. You can kind of teach yourself to be more enthusiastic about things, but you will find we're all humans, and you will find with that enthusiasm, people respond to that. You will find more opportunities opening up, because as if you're junior, you should be looking across the piece and be like, how can I learn? And it might be, I'm learning like this, going in zigzags. All of that pays off over time. And then the communication piece, again, we've touched on this, but you really can learn that. And it's a real skill set to be able to learn to communicate across a whole diverse range of people. You need to find that nugget that starts a conversation with someone. And that doesn't mean being inauthentic. I think authenticity is so important, but there's always something you can talk about with someone and build a relationship around. And then teamwork, which we've spoken about. Teamwork for me is absolutely central. So enthusiasm, communication, and teamwork, I would say.
Love it. And I also love the fact that I say to my team, you're not expected and you cannot know everything. But if you don't know the answer, the important thing is that you go away and find the answer, and then you come back and provide that answer succinctly. I think there's this misconception that, particularly as lawyers, that you're supposed to know absolutely everything and you're supposed to be able to answer every single question. But actually, there's no harm in sometimes saying, that's a really good question. Thank you for that. Leave it with me. I don't know the answer, but I will come back. And I think that's the important part. You don't need to, and you don't need to pretend to know everything, coming back to your authenticity point. And there'll be people in the team that have more of a technical skill set, more of a BD skill set, more of a deeper dive skill set. It's harnessing those and bringing them all together. So I think there's some really, really top tips for non-negotiables, but kind of a deeper question. Where were they driven from? So where did you pull them from? Was there someone as a mentor? Was there someone that you learnt off? Or is that just built within you?
I would say, I mean, I feel like I get on the therapist couch. Probably, like with most things, it kind of comes from childhood. So my background is not the stereotypical background you might associate with a career in law, all the things you might expect: single parent family, first one to go to university, all of that. And I realised pretty quickly when I started as a trainee that I didn't have that same institutional knowledge or social cachet that a number of my colleagues did. And I was lucky I trained at a firm that was very open, very diverse and welcoming. But this is all about building relationships, and you're meeting people in the industry, etc. And there might be people where, I had that experience where, you're at a nice client dinner and you're like, oh, which one do I use? And you're watching the people. And it's a cliche, but I've had it. I'm sure plenty of other people have had it. And, you're in conversations where people are talking about where they skied and things like that. And you're like, okay. But that's okay. You don't have to be the same. And actually, it's really important that you bring your unique self. That is what makes you you. Bring yourself to that conversation. It's okay to be like, hey, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. And I learned that one of the things that I had, which I felt was a strength, was really enthusiastic. I like to learn. I like to grow just on a personal level. And I got feedback from people and from mentors of that's something that really makes an impression on leaders. And so I suppose I doubled down on it. I was like, okay, if this is my thing, if this is something that helps me to grow, then I'm not going to hide that under a bushel. I'm going to be enthusiastic. I'm going to say, I'm interested in hearing more about this. Is there anything I can do to help on that? 9 times out of 10, people say, it's okay, we've got it. But when a project comes up, you might just stick in that person's mind. They say, hey, do you know what? Let's give this person a shot. And you don't know where the opportunities are going to come from, but I have found, and I suppose I'm specifically talking about enthusiasm, I've found that as I've grown in my career and as I've become more senior, when someone is enthusiastic, it really makes an impact on me. When someone says, no, I'd love to help on that project, you're like, great, that's fantastic. And so it can be a real differentiator, having that approach. And that's something, you don't need to have any kind of particular skill. It's just a characteristic you throw out there.
You said before that it all comes back to people, relationships, and just being, you're using your words, the authentic you. And I think there's something really powerful in that you're right, people often overlook, because there's a stereotype that people think that you need to be to fit in, or things should be done that way because they've always been done that way. But actually, we're all human, again, as you said before, and there'll be different things that take interest, or people take interest in you because of X, Y, and Z, their background. But I think being you is really, really powerful, and just being friendly, polite, enthusiastic. But that goes a long way in my world, and it seems as though it does in yours as well.
Yes, and they're things that are not hard to add on to your skill set or your approach, right? As you say, I think being polite and communicating in an appropriate way, absolutely, challenging. And I hopefully all of my team would say the same. I do encourage my team to challenge me, and I leave space and say, if you don't agree, tell me, because you are experts in what you do. And I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do, but we will have a better outcome if we all contribute. And so that doesn't mean I'm not necessarily right all the time. I'm wrong an awful lot of the time. But between us, we can get to a place where the outcome is really good and it works, right? There's no point me proposing a solution that, frankly, isn't going to be actionable on the ground.
I was going to come on to this, but you've just touched upon it, so I'll speak about it now. But I think that's one of the skill set of being a leader, of actually realising what is being said around you and not have that tunnel vision. Because the amount of times that I've been in meetings with whoever, and they've said something and I've thought, that is 10 times better than the idea I've had. Let's use that. But the more thoughts, the better, to an extent, because it just shapes you and challenges your thinking. And actually, I've learned an awful lot from people who sit there and think, oh, I can't add, or I haven't really got anything of value to say. But actually, when they speak, they're really powerful because they really think things through and they come at it from a different angle, which then allows you to go up in your helicopter and have a look at, that's a really good idea and that fits because of this, this, and this. So again, it's using everything in the armory to the maximum ability that you have within the team. But you've just said something also of you're never right all of the time. And I'll come on to a little bit in a minute, but what's the most valuable lesson that you've had in your career so far? Does anything stick out?
So I think it's probably going back to the authenticity point.
Mm.
So when I was still relatively junior, I think, and I had quite a strong accent when I was younger, and it's just over the years is kind of shaved away a little bit. But there are still certain words that people might pick up on and go, "Oh, okay," and it's not a problem, and I'm very proud of it. I'm completely very, very proud of it. And when I was relatively junior, I had someone I was working with just made a couple of jokes about my accent, and I was fine with it. But eventually, there were a few too many jokes, and I spoke to a partner at the time, and I just said, "Is this a problem? Is this an issue?" And he was wonderful, actually, and he said, and he helped influence my view on this. He was like, absolutely not. He was like, don't you dare change anything, because the authentic you is who clients instruct. We've got all kinds of lawyers. They all have a different skill set. They're all different people. Clients expect this level of ability, and then they instruct people. We are all people, and people instruct people. So you need to build a relationship. And if you're not being authentic, that relationship isn't going to stand up over time. And that really was great for me, because it built my confidence of, do you know what? I'm just going to carry on being me, and that will. It's not necessarily in a professional context. You don't have to like everyone you work with. But you have to build working relationships, and in my experience, I think having people with different outlooks and different perspectives and different experiences just generates a better outcome. So that was a really valuable lesson. It's something, it still comes up actually when I'm working with people, or if I'm mentoring someone who's just got a different experience, and it's like, all of this is valuable, all of this is useful. Don't change any of that.
That story resonates because I won't say which firm. When I was at a specific firm before, a large national firm, there was an individual there, and that individual, pretty much like you, had a really, really thick, particular accent, and they were convinced, because of numerous comments made both internally and externally, that it was really going to be a barrier for them. And the same answer was given by a partner that you've just said, by one of our partners. And it was, never be fearful of what has made you. You are who you are. Some people will like it, some people won't, but that's okay, and that's life. So just continue to do what you do, and you'll be okay. So that story resonates. It really, really does resonate. Just moving on slightly, mistakes. Now, mistakes are this taboo subject that no one really likes talking about, right? Because no one ever likes to make a mistake. I know I don't. Do I make them? Yes. Have I made them? Yes. Good or bad mistakes?
I'd probably distinguish between personal and professional. So professionally, you don't want too many mistakes. I think to your point, no one likes making them, and I don't encourage mistakes, but mistakes do happen. We're all human, and we're all trying to do our best. And if it's a mistake made in good faith, then let's recalibrate that as an opportunity to learn. From my perspective, I think it's really important to take ownership and accountability. So if there is a mistake, if someone were to bring it to me and say, this has happened, it's like, okay, well, what do we do to fix this? That's the priority, right? The priority is, what do we do to fix this? Do we need to take any action? Let's focus on that. But well done you, because you've got to own that and you want to learn from it. And that's the kind of attitude I look for and I really appreciate, is when there is that accountability and ownership, and let's try and fix it. And that's fine. Then it becomes a learning opportunity, right? How do we prevent that happening again, etc., etc.? Because there's always an explanation. And I make mistakes all the time. It happens regularly. Hopefully not too regularly, but there are things we can learn from. On a personal level, I think mistakes, certainly when you're junior and in the personal sphere, mistakes show that you're growing and you're learning. So that's okay. But again, it's if it's in good faith and you take ownership and you learn from it, then I think there's absolutely no problem. But I'd rather they didn't happen too often, let's be honest.
I completely agree with all of that. And I think, as you say, the important bit is, have you owned it? Have you brought it to the attention? Have you fixed it? But more importantly, the learning opportunity, as you say, and it doesn't happen again. But I know, speaking personally from experience, when I've made a mistake, if I look back now, at the time, it was the biggest thing in the world. It was absolutely catastrophic. In reality, it wasn't catastrophic, but that has helped me become who I am today. And I think that comes back to your point of mistakes, don't make too many. But it does show that you're probably operating at the edge of where you're trying to get to and you're pushing yourself. And without mistakes, you don't learn. And as long as you learn and you don't continue to make them, I think, look, we're all human. Going back to that human personal point, it is what it is, but just don't make them continuously and or repeat the same, because then that is a problem.
Yes.
So as a global head of litigation, you've got multiple teams across multiple jurisdictions that you've already said. So I think you said America, over here, Australia. To pull all of those teams together and operate in the manner that you ideally would like, what's the secret sauce that you put on? How do you do that?
I mean, I wish there was a secret sauce. Like, I think that would be my ultimate side hustle. If there was a secret sauce that I knew how to make, my view is successful leadership depends so much on context and on the individuals in the team you lead, and there isn't a one size fits all. You do need to be aware of individuals, you need to be aware of the culture you're operating in, etc. And all of that is a balancing act. So in that sense, I think it's very important, especially when you're operating a global team, to be empathetic and to be pragmatic. You also need to have quite clear red lines in terms of your expectations. You need to communicate that very clearly. But how you get to certain aims and goals, you're going to need to be pragmatic in terms of what works in one place might not work in another. And that's where you need your people to speak up. So I very much encourage open discussion. My teams, I want them to come back and push back if they think something's not working. And then we collaborate and work together. So if I'm thinking of the secret sauce, certainly the ingredients I'd throw in there would be empathy, pragmatism, and then there are go-tos, and then it's communication and teamwork over and over again. But that there is a tone from the top here of, it's important that when I'm speaking with my team, if there is feedback and we communicate it in a very sensible and constructive way, that I'm demonstrating that ability to take that on and to say, okay, great, how do we develop, and so that I'm not defensive. So there is an element of needing to park your ego slightly, because I don't need to be the problem solver in every situation. I need to help empower my team so they can solve the problem that they're facing.
I think that's a really powerful word, empower. And I'm not a leader in any way, shape or form like you are across all the multiple platforms. But I think as a leader, sometimes the responsibility is quite heavy, because certainly from my perspective, I think it's quite a powerful, but equally a really, really important job that you're trying to help and develop people be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And sometimes I do sit there and think, am I doing this right? Am I helping these people the way that I should be helping them? Should I be doing anything different? So I think that secret sauce question, I've spoken to many, many people, and if you look back on the podcasts, no one has got the secret sauce, which comforts me significantly. So I think
reassuring, right? We're all just trying to do
definitely reassuring. So I'm just taking all of the snippets that people tell me to try and make me a better version of myself, to then hopefully make the team better versions of themselves. But thank you for sharing that. Just on the leader point, leaders, born or self-taught?
I would absolutely lean towards self-taught because I think there's certain characteristics that lend themselves to being a leadership style, but that's probably, I suppose, a traditional leadership style, and you can lead in many different ways. And I think the things that I hope I have learned and that I put into practice are things that, frankly, I've seen other leaders do, good and bad, right? People that
Yep.
I've seen during my career and just during my life in general. And I've seen people take a certain approach and I've responded to it, or I've seen others respond to it. I thought, oh, that's a really good way of doing things. And kind of then you just put that in the back burner of, okay, when my time comes, I'll try and manage it in that way. So I would absolutely lean towards self-taught.
I agree. I think, as you just say, if I look back from when I first started to now, you do look around, don't you, and you think, don't want to be that person. Equally, I love the way that person is doing it.
Yeah.
Do you rule with an iron fist? Are you more empathetic? Is there somewhere in between? I think if you put all of those pieces together, that is what helps you try and do the best job that you can do from a leadership point of view. But is there anyone, and I won't ask you to name names, is there anyone where you think back and you really focus on that individual inspired me, whether that's someone you've worked with, whether that's a book you've read? Is there anything that you've took inspiration on?
I think in terms of inspiration, so I love sport and football in particular. I love football and I've always loved football. So I think I find stories of successful sports people incredibly inspiring. And I think maybe it's I'm getting older and having kids and all the rest of it. It gets me a little bit emotional when I see people succeed who've overcome a lot of hurdles and really demonstrated resilience. So something like the Olympics is just a weep fest for me because it's just you see these people who are often in sports that frankly get no attention from one Olympics to the next Olympics, and you don't even know how they've managed to make it where they're doing 3 jobs, etc. And they've carried on, overcome injuries. You know, I think people like Kelly Holmes and Jess Ennis, etc. And I volunteered at the London Olympics, so I feel quite attached to that particular Olympics. Some of the things that happened there, and it's just amazing to then see those people succeed. And success might not be, winning the gold medal. Success might be, that swimmer who got to the Olympics and had never even been in an Olympic-sized pool. Like, that's phenomenal. What an achievement. And the characteristics you show to get to that, the dedication, the commitment, the resilience, all of that is amazing. And I think I find that completely inspirational.
And again, it just, whether it's professional services or sports or whatever the role may be, it just goes to show that, and I'll use the word ordinary, whatever is ordinary people can do exceptional things. You just need hard work, dedication, ambition, and resilience to make sure that you try and get to where you want to be. But I think that applies across all walks of life, what you've just said. And I agree. I think there's nothing better than a fairy tale story of, I'll use the term rags to riches in whatever context you want to apply that. But seeing someone on their journey from where they've been to where they get to is exceptional. And the Olympics, that still sticks in my mind. However many years ago, I can still remember where I was watching all of the running races, watching the field, watching the swimming. Yeah, it was something special. But thank you for sharing that. In your role, Fiona, and this is a tough one, what do you think your greatest achievement has been so far?
So if I leave aside kind of individual cases, there are some of them that I'm really proud of. They were really complex or what have you over the course of my career, but let's not speak about those. And also I can't because most of them are confidential.
Yeah.
I would say the thing, especially as I've got more senior, the thing I take most joy from is seeing people who I have worked with and maybe supported in some way or help to mentor, even if it officially or unofficially, see them rise and grow. I find that wonderful. And it's still a journey, and I'm still learning all the time. But there are certainly a few people I can think of who have grown and who are more senior, and I might have played a small part in that, and that is wonderful. That feels to me like that's the real achievement, is passing something on to somebody else, and they can pick up hopefully good things from other different people, and then they pass it on to the next generation. That's wonderful.
What a great answer. That's an absolute, it's an inspirational answer.
Thank you.
It is, it really is. I think it's really rewarding, isn't it, seeing someone become better versions of themselves or realise their potential. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, for various reasons. But yeah, I think there's nothing better than seeing someone do well, and actually, even if it's a very, very small part, you can kind of think that's a little bit of me is there. So I think that lasts, that's legacy. That does last. With the multiple teams that you've got across all of the continents, so the business, you make a decision. That decision is made. How do you bring everyone with you on that journey to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, and it's really important. It's really important, and it's something I talk about a lot actually with the teams. You want to have a culture of the communication. People keep coming back to the communication piece, but you need to establish a framework for expectations around communication. Who are your stakeholders in whatever project? And so that does mean, building relationships. We keep talking about building relationships. It's with your colleagues, it's with your leaders, it's with the business, it's with your outside counsel. But having a clear communication cadence and saying, okay, this is when I'm going to update you, these moments. Here's some information. Here's how we're going to stay linked so that you know what's coming down the track. So there shouldn't be any surprises. So it shouldn't be a situation where I or one of my team are going to one of our leaders and saying, this is we haven't told you about this. We've been working on it for 2 years, but now we need you. We need you involved because this is happening. That shouldn't happen. And so that again comes down to communication. So we try and you mentioned this, we try and bring our stakeholders along on the journey. And that doesn't mean involving everyone in every decision. That's not how it works. And you have to have that racy, who's running this, who's accountable, who's informed, etc. And setting that out early and saying, this is how we're going to move through things, and then giving regular updates. If there is a piece of information that comes out of nowhere that completely changes our position, well, we need to review that, we need to reset, and then we need to communicate that change to the right people. And so that, frankly, is where I can help a lot of the time with, okay, X also needs to know about this, and Y, that's okay, they don't need to know about it just yet.
Yes.
So it comes down once again to communication, but also having a clear plan for when you're sharing, what you're sharing, and who you're sharing it with.
Thank you for sharing that. I think because businesses, law firms, ourselves included, sometimes we have an objective, and it's one thing setting it, but it's another thing getting there, because you need everyone pulling in the same direction. And as you say, everyone that needs to know certain things needs to know, because unless you've got this common denominator of everyone is pointing that way to reach this, even if it's the best objective in the world, you're never going to reach it, or it's never going to be successfully accomplished. It will be suboptimal at best if you get anywhere near it. So I think, as you correctly said, look, there's a common theme here all throughout, isn't it? There's people, there's communication, and there's teamwork. And I think it's that magic, going back to the magic sauce, the special sauce, trying to pull all of these together, in theory, should be easy. In reality, you and I both know, especially with the size of JLL, that is a challenge in itself. I do know that one of the tools that you guys use, and this is a hot topic at the minute, and I think will continue to be a hot topic, is AI, artificial intelligence, and how AI can supplement and or work with lawyers, internal stakeholders, to try and get the optimal performance and speed up the process. Just talk to me. How are you guys using AI? How are you finding it? What are your thoughts on it generally? Because there's lots of different thoughts, good and bad. So interested in yours.
Yeah, so I think we see it's very much part of the world now and will continue to be. And I know just as from a wider holistic perspective, I think we're all getting our arms around what opportunities it creates, but we absolutely see it as opportunity. So if I think from the business perspective, there's a lot of opportunity in the prop tech space, and that's around optimizing building use. It can do very clever things where you have so much data and you can plug it in and you can see, right, well, if you're running a hot desk office, is there a particular desk that gets a lot of use, and why is that? And can we make some little changes to the environment there that mean more desks have, which is wonderful, right? Because that's all driven towards helping our clients optimize their space. From the legal team perspective, and this is across the company, but something that we've found really exciting and we're really trying to make most use of is that we have our own internal model of, we call it JLL GPT, which we use an AI tool, which we've had for a couple of years now. And we absolutely, we share use cases. We're trying to make sure we're maximizing the use, obviously within sensible and responsible use parameters in terms of how we're using it. It's very much a tool for our lawyers in the work that they do. But it's not there, we're not there in copying and pasting the answer and using it for legal advice or any of those things that would be very, very scary. But it's such a helpful tool. And you think for a global company, where we find people use it a lot, within the legal team, certainly is for things like helping with even things like translation. We have people who are not native English speakers, and it's helpful as a sense check of, have I written this in a concise manner in business English style, because we use English as our kind of business language. And then for things like, so I've used it a lot for, throwing in a load of data and saying, can you put this in a table for me of X, Y, Z, and spit out the table? Wonderful.
Yep.
Right. Does it give me the answer? No, it might get me 60, 70% of the way there. That's wonderful. That's a huge time save. But obviously we use it responsibly and we're checking outputs and we're not just wholly relying on it. But it is a great tool and a huge time saver. And for me, the focus is on how can we use it to help us with those tasks that are very repetitive, the tasks where, frankly, they're a big time suck, but they're perhaps not using our full skill set, so that we do have the time to really add value on those areas where it would be most impactful.
Yeah. I was smiling halfway through that. So and you've probably seen this as litigators, we quite often now get quite a lot of copy and paste, chat GPT, this is the law. As you well know, for the listeners that don't, chat GPT has even been referenced in, or AI tools have been referenced in judgments recently, where there's been cases that have been relied upon that do not exist. It's just that AI has created them. So I think from our perspective, just like yours, AI is and will be and is continuously evolving at pace, to say the least. It's a great tool. It is going to help us in a law perspective, from a litigation perspective, to absorb large volumes of data, give us concise answers, to do the research. I don't think it will ever replace us. I think it will assist us and it will help us become more efficient, which should impact the cost that we are put out at. But I can never see a position in our profession, as in a litigator, where AI will replace us completely. I think it will help us become better. And I think as long as we use it and we check it and we verify what happens with it, there is a brilliant place for it in the market. And as a firm, we are firmly looking at and involved with AI. And that's why I mention it, because I know you guys are too. So thank you for your insights on that. Just conscious of time, so I'm just going to move on to one final question, and then the best part, well, I think it's the best part, some quick fire questions. So one final question, and this is for me and our viewers. What do you look for from external lawyers? What are the key points that you really look for where we can add value?
And I think we've touched on some of this actually. So things like it's relationship building. But what's really helpful for me is people who learn our business. I do not expect people to know the ins and outs of a big big old company like JLL straight away, but people who take the time to understand our business, because then the advice and the collaboration is so much more effective. And it's one thing that's absolutely crucial is being proactive. So sharing information with us. We do have dedicated litigators, and when those litigators are running the case, they are running the case on behalf of the company, and seeking the collaboration and the support of external providers to help us in terms of navigating our way through that matter. And so we want there to be a very strong relationship. We want there to be sharing of information. We want it to be a discussion, right? Because the people we turn to externally, we value hugely. They're bringing resource and knowledge that we need to help us, but equally, we have experience and expertise, and we understand our business, and we understand the overall goals of the business. And so that should be an ongoing discussion. And so that collaboration, being proactive in terms of sharing information with us, keeping us informed of developments, and being prepared to take a view, right? It's really helpful to have someone who says, do you know what? I think this is the right path to go down, and here's why. And then there will be a discussion, and we'll get to whatever the answer is we get to. But that's really helpful, taking a view. We don't need someone giving us black letter law for a 6-page memo. I mean, that frankly, that's not helpful for us. It's pick up the phone, set up a quick Teams call, run through the options, talk about it, come to a commercial, pragmatic solution together that we can then discuss with our stakeholders as well.
And again, we've touched upon this before. I think there's an expectation that lawyers, external advisors, whoever that may be to the business, has a baseline technical expertise that should be there. It's interesting because over and above that is, how is that delivered? So rather than the 36 pages of black letter law, going back to your 2 sentences, can you deliver it in a way that saves you guys time, as a clear direction of travel with rationale? So if you're asked a question internally, why you think you should do something because of X, Y, and Z. And I remember when you and I first met, we were of the same view of, look, this is a two-way street. It needs to work for both of us. And it's that collaboration point of view, going back to different viewpoints, different thoughts. It's good to work together and have your viewpoint, our viewpoint, and then figure out, well, what's the best viewpoint. So I think that collaboration is really key. And that's what I hear a lot from legal teams. It's not just the law, it's how you deliver it and the commercial realities of, well, you may be in a really, really super strong position, but actually, if you look at this, you're not going to go to trial for 2 years. It's hundreds of £1,000s down. Where is the commercial off-ramp that works for us as a business, but equally works for whoever you are in a dispute with? So you can both focus on the bigger, wider interests of focusing on your business. So thank you for sharing that. I could speak to you for another hour and a half, more for sure, but quick fire questions. So,
Yes.
Are you performance-driven, KPI, or people-driven?
I could probably guess. People-driven, certainly.
What is it that sets your company apart from competitors?
We have a real focus on continuous improvement and challenging ourselves to get better all the time. And that's in partnership with clients, in partnership with our colleagues, and growing our people and delivering on what we say we're going to deliver on.
Listen to your head or heart?
So actually, I'd probably say listen to my head, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd listen to my head.
I think I know the answer to this as well. I'm going to ask it. Micromanage or trust your people?
Trust your people, honestly. I haven't got time for the micromanagement, and it's frankly, all of my people are fantastic at what they do. So I trust them to do what they do and involve me where it's appropriate, and I'll support them in achieving their goals and helping the company as well.
And they're there for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Use them. Bit of a deep question. Any regrets? Business perspective.
No. From a business perspective, every day's a school day, right? Anything that's gone wrong has helped me to learn and grow. So no problems with any of that.
Last one. and I wish I could do this because I've got a 40th birthday coming up. So you've got a magic wand. You can go back to 21-year-old Fiona. What is the key bit of advice that you could give yourself, a 21 yourself, you just starting out? What would you say to yourself?
Invest in Gen AI. That would have been a good one. I think personally, probably on a personal level, don't stop playing football, because I just, life took over and I stopped playing football, and now trying to play football again, and it's a lot harder when you're a bit older and you haven't done it for a while.
Yeah.
And then professionally, back yourself. That doesn't mean being complacent or overly confident, but trust yourself and trust your instincts, and you won't go too far wrong.
Good bit of advice. Fiona, been an absolute delight to have you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know how busy you are. Thank
Pleasure.
you. See you soon.
It's great to have a chat with you, James, and thank you very much for the opportunity to have a chat. So nice to speak to you, and we'll speak soon.